what the city is talking about. This is Montreal Now on News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
That is James Mennie over at the Montreal Gazette. And Jim, I understand you have your own pre-breaking news to begin with today.
Well, absolutely. We kind of wait for these things now because it really has become a very good way to figure out which way the wind is blowing downriver in Quebec City. And the Léger survey that is conducted monthly for Québécois is going to drop at 7 o'clock. They have a little tease, though, this afternoon, just like an hour ago. It turns out that the only party leader to have seen their popularity increase is, wait for it, Marc Tanguay, interim Liberal Party. Yes, he has skyrocketed to 8%. He is tied with Eric James, head of the Quebec Conservative Party. The news is bad for François Legault. He remains at 18% in terms, personally, as the person perceived as being best suited to being Premier of Quebec. Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, the Parti québécois, continues to lead with 27%. However, that is a drop of 2 points over the space of a month. Has PSPP mania begun to cool? I suspect it has, but we'll get more of the details later on this evening. I'm sure we'll be talking about them tomorrow. The other thing, in fact, Jean-Marc Léger is quoted as saying, the news is not going to be good for Gabriel Nadeau-Dubois. It seems the internal bickering within his party has not done him any favors in the polls. So we'll see there. I think that, as I recall, they're at maybe 13, 14%. Wouldn't it be weird if the Liberals kept moving up by default? Because last I heard, they were neck and neck with Quebec Solidaire. But yeah, I think, especially now as we approach the summer, you may see some numbers switch around. And quite frankly, and as far as I'm concerned, this is another object lesson for the Quebec Liberals that they should have been a little more perhaps proactive about getting themselves a leader. I think there's going to be a news/power vacuum in terms of Quebec politics over the next few months. And if the Liberals had been able to fill it, I really think they could have made a generic change in public perceptions of that party. So you know what? I mean, I hope I'm wrong, because it would be nice to see the oldest political party in Quebec not get turned into a footnote. But for the time being, we'll have to wait and see. But I think tomorrow's poll is going to be very, very interesting.
Wouldn't it be something, Jim? I'm just imagining a situation where the Liberals continue to, inch by inch, if you will, gain in popularity, and Marc Tanguay gains in popularity and ends up doing so well, and he's the only person who said he won't run for head of the Liberal Party. That would seem to be perfect for the Liberals.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is, but I mean, he's at the top of a very long list. I mean, will you see people suddenly changing their mind? Will people suddenly have an epiphany and say, yeah, I said I wasn't interested, maybe I am interested in leading the Quebec Liberal Party. All that said, though, one poll does not a trend make, and let's face it, I would respectfully submit there are some major internal visceral problems within the Quebec Liberal Party that have to be solved, not the least of which being it has to figure out what it wants to be when it grows up. Exactly. And quite frankly, as far as our listeners are concerned, that is a destination that has yet to be arrived at. So
let me move on from that. I said we had not yet heard, not received the verdict as to whether there'll be an injunction granted today or not. Have you heard anything?
No, and as I said yesterday, the judge is going to take his time. This is a big deal. It's because it's not just about McGill. It's probably about the growing number of occupations in the province of Quebec alone. University of Sherbrooke got a 10-tent occupation as of late yesterday. But I got to tell you, I was checking the entirety of our coverage for the arguments that were heard yesterday, and I don't think we should discount it. I had mentioned I found it interesting. The Montreal Police Department had their lawyer there, and their lawyer actually did address the court and basically said, I love this quote, saying that we are not the armed branch of anyone. In other words, we are not the weaponized branch of the City of Montreal or François Legault. And the other thing that he pointed out is they have to actually see someone committing an infraction to make an arrest. And I remember yesterday you were talking, and forgive me, her name is Casey, but that most excellent lawyer that you were talking to.
Perla Liadis, yeah.
Yes, she's And she pointed out as well that court orders are not executed by the cops. They're executed by bailiffs. Cops get involved when the bailiffs need support or believe that they might be in some kind of danger executing the order. So the fact that, all of a sudden, the cops have to move in. Yes, I know what happened in Calgary, and I know what happened in Edmonton, but we are not in Alberta. We're in Quebec. And I just found it very interesting that there were a certain number of messages, I think, that were sent out loud and clear yesterday concerning this situation. But I think above and beyond everything else, this judge, I think, is going to be very hard-nosed in assessing the necessity and the legality of issuing that particular injunction in this particular context. Will it take much longer? Honestly, I don't think we're going to be surprised. I doubt we're going to see some late-night decision. I would imagine tomorrow, maybe midday, maybe in the afternoon, you might have a decision made because there is you have to. I mean, I'm sure the court has to consider the concerns of the plaintiff, which is McGill, and they're saying we want to have this done as quickly as possible. I think they will get an expedited decision, if I can put it that way. But once again, I'm not sure it's going to go the way they want.
Wow, it's interesting. If again, I said to you, I think yesterday, Jim, if you were a betting man, and we often kind of use that phrase, right? Yeah. If you were a betting man, would you bet that they get this or not?
No, I wouldn't.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
Folding money?
Right now, I'd say it's about 3-1 for them actually getting this.
Oh, you're setting odds now. Okay, good.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Let me move on to this last topic because this is what I started our show with today. I'm going to ask listeners again when we come back. The fact that what's called the Sunshine List, which in Ontario anyway, shows the salaries of all civil servants there who make over $100,000 a year. They've been doing this, from what I understand, since 1996.
Yep.
When the premier here was asked whether it's time to do this after we had some figures released last week at the Caisse de Dépôt and other healthcare executives working in the system and how much they made, he said no, he doesn't see a need for it. What'd you make of this?
And my hats off to Québécois for the Herculean task that they set their investigative people on, because they went and created their own Sunshine List in Quebec.
Yeah.
But they had to do it with access requests and going to various annual reports for various ministries. The information is there, and that's Francois Legault is sort of sneeringly saying, well, the information is there. Yeah, but you just have to get into a diving bell and wear a spacesuit and go on suspended animation to get it. So it's not easy to do. But on the other hand, I have to ask myself as a taxpayer, what purpose does it solve other than to raise people's blood pressure over how much perhaps civil servants are being paid? We don't know what the context is of their job. We don't know what the context is of their workload. And the other question that never gets asked, or at least it hasn't been asked recently, whether it's the Sunshine List in Ontario, Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, BC, Alberta. When we look at all these things, how much does it cost to maintain these things? Because I think if you're worried about taxpayers' dollars being properly spent, I would love to know how long it takes, because I'm sure the list has to be perpetually updated as well. Is it one person? Is it a group of people? I have no idea. But all that said, I really wonder, would people be happier knowing how much their civil servants get? Because remember, it's not like you have a button and say, no, that guy's getting paid too much, drop his or her salary. It doesn't work. You're just learning someone's salary, end of story. So you might be angry, you might not be angry. Chances are, I would respectfully submit it. I think a lot of people wouldn't even bother to check it if it existed. But, so I'm really wondering, apart from, that good old-fashioned populist suspender-snapping approach to politics, what role a Sunshine List actually has.
That's an interesting, if you think about it, Jim, it's not so much the role it has, at least for me. I think to myself, just by virtue of the premier saying, no, you don't need access to it, and if you do, as you said, you can go look it up. That just creates doubts in people's mind. And I think that's what you want to necessarily avoid. So just put it out there, let people have a look at it. It'll get forgotten in a day or two or three, and call it a day, instead of simply saying, because you create controversy just simply by saying no.
I think Ontario figured out it was better to rip off the Band-Aid and let people see it and vent and then just move on. I'm sorry to say that one of the conclusions that we've reached here on the show multiple times is that people do not tend to remember past a certain date. So, we're kind of a nation of amnesiacs. Yeah. So it's not that big a deal. But yeah, I mean, it's right. But honestly, but you know what else? I think just in Quebec, and it doesn't matter what the party is, there is a culture of secrecy, of it's none of your business, that has permeated governments for as long as I've been covering them, and I'm not sure it's going to be that easy to change.
We shall see, and we'll see what our listeners think too. Jim, thank you. Appreciate it.
Have a night.